Here's your soybean report from the Illinois soybean growers. When the cold, wet weather finally stopped, it was already deep into the planting season, and many farmers headed to the field whether it was ready or not.
The ideal one, of course, is that all existing vegetation is controlled before we put any seed in the ground. Now, that's either through herbicide application, tillage, or some combination of those. But I believe you're correct. There's going to be instances where the farmers are going to pull into the field to get it planted, and there's really been nothing done to control that existing vegetation. So really remember that, as dense as some of this stand is of these winter annuals, maybe even some early summer annuals, it's going to be very competitive with the crop very early on in the growth stage. So really the best practice to do is to try to ensure that you get that weed vegetation under control as soon as you can after planting if you don't do it before you plant.
That's University of Illinois weed specialist Aaron Hager, who says soybeans require more care than corn to avoid herbicide damage.
On the soybean side of things, there's actually more active ingredients that have to be applied before the beans come out of the ground, or you run the risk of some fairly severe crop injury. So any product that has metribuzin in it, or saflufenicil, flumioxazin, pendimethalin, those all have to be applied before the beans start to crack. And the reason we're using the common names of these active ingredients is simply because they're in so many different premixes. So if you look at the label and you see something has one of those active ingredients in it, if that was your planned herbicide, if the beans haven't come up yet, you still should be in good shape. But if there's any evidence that they're starting to crack, or let's say hypothetically if you're in a no-till setting and you planted a little wet and you didn't get all the furrows closed, then you might want to think about talking to your retail supplier and making a switch to a different product that can be applied, to and not injure soybean if it comes in direct contact with that foliage. They're usually the components that we rely on predominantly for extended residual control in the soil. But they do, of course, have some foliar activity, but soybean can be fairly sensitive to these products, and that's why we really have to be very cautious. And then also be aware of even some of the trade names that can give us possibly a little confusion if we're not careful. And to give you an example, a product called Zidua, we could use that pre-emergence in soybean, or we could use that after the beans come out of the ground. Zidua Pro, on the other hand, has to be applied before the beans start to come out of the ground. So we need to be cautious and make sure that we understand what are in these either straight good products or in all these premix products.
That's your soybean report from the Illinois soybean growers. I'm Stu Ellis.